Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call a roll. Commissioner Jorgensen. Commissioner Zundell.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Dardis here. Let the record show at this time we have 4 commissioners. We're trying to connect via telephone with another Commissioner Jorgensen, who is traveling. Next order of business, to approve the order of the agenda. Commissioners, it's in front of you.
So moved.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a discussion,
Hello?
please? Is there a discussion, please? Is there a second? Excuse me.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Zundell seconds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda
Hello?
as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Commissioner Jorgensen, can you hear me? We heard him in here, but he didn't respond when I asked if he could hear us.
Hello?
We're going to continue. Next order of business is approval of the minutes of September 16th. They have been presented and distributed.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Zundell. I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of September 16th as distributed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item F is to approve the minutes of the September 23rd meeting, 2024.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Zundell. I have a motion to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of September 23rd, 2024 as presented. Is there any discussion? Commissioner?
I just had one that I had emailed Emily about. I think there was just some on page 10 on the bottom of it. I think half of it got corrected, but she is aware of that, and I think all the information is in there mostly. But she
Madam
is
Secretary,
aware.
are you aware of the changes Commissioner Zundell is talking about? Yep. They will be corrected, please? Yep. All right, very good. Thank you, Commissioner Zundell. I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please signify of accepting the minutes of September 23rd with the additions and corrections as outlined by Commissioner Zundell. Please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Commissioner Jorgensen, can you hear us now?
I can.
Excellent. For everyone in the room, Commissioner Jorgensen has joined us via telephone. The next order of business is building permits. The building permit report has been presented and distributed.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits as distributed. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next order of business is the consent agenda. We have items A through G.
Make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Zundell moves to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as distributed, items A through G. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Yeah.
Opposed? Motion carried. We are now in the regular portion of the agenda. First order of business is public comment. We have had two individuals from request to be heard. The first is Mr. David Withy. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Dave Withy, 24-21 McLeod Drive East, West Fargo. I'll admit, as nice as you all are, I'm always still nervous when I come up here to speak in front of you. I want to admit a mistake here. I understand that the paper printed a letter to the editor last week while I was traveling, and there's a typo in there. Salaries haven't gone up 58.5% since 2019, or it's been 2017 that they've increased from. Not quite as good as longshoremen, but still 6.8% on average per year. My calculations, some of you may doubt, but they're correct. They come from using city documents. And I know one of the commissioners actually verified that the salaries have increased as we forecast at West Fargo TAP that they've increased. I also have a document that city sent to the forum with department managers' salaries on it, which I won't make public. But those numbers also agree with increases like 2022 to 2023, agree with what our forecast said they would be, a little over 8%. So my concern is not so much employees. As Mayor Dardis mentioned at the last meeting, if you look at the entire package, you'll see where we really are. And I think when you look at that total package, you'll find that, well, it's difficult to beat the retirement package when we pay the matching for the employees, and a pretty good match. And when you look at how their salaries have increased, for anybody who's been here at least since 2017, it's difficult to believe that anybody can say with a straight face that our employees are undercompensated. And then once again, you include the rest of the package, our benefits, which I believe are second to none. My concern is taxpayers. West Fargo TAP analyzed 28 random properties around the city. Since 2017, their assessments and therefore their property taxes have increased 38.8%. Just because their values went up doesn't mean the residents of those houses' incomes went up to pay for those increased taxes. That's the problem. Since 2017, the average employee salary has increased 58.5%, property taxes 38.8%. It's no wonder that more and more of the followers of West Fargo TAP have decided to vote yes on Measure 4. They don't feel like you're listening to them. They don't believe you give them any other choice but to vote for something that even they believe doesn't make sense. They feel like they have to find some way to cut costs and cut the increase in expenses, like the county has done and like the school district has done in lowering the mills, not by just 0.5%. I do appreciate what you do, as we do. I wish I could have had more time in that article to give compliments to people like Commissioner Olson for his comments about what employees should do with step increases, and Mayor Darcis's comments about look at the entire package as other positive things that happened. I also want to give a shout out to Matt Anvik for sharing with us information on why utility rates needed to go up, and we support that. Thank you for your time.
Next individual that has signed up is Mr. Steve Marquardt. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, and thank you. Just as Dave said, some of the same points here, but I still have questions about the budget as well and how we're doing these things, because once again, it's really affecting the taxpayers, and those are the people that I'm guessing they're talking to you, they're talking to us. And as Dave said, I'm not a fan of Measure 4, but there are a lot of people that are going that direction because of what is happening right here in the city of West Fargo. Employees are receiving a step increase as well as a COLA increase, which, as Dave said, is rather high as it goes along. Employees also receive a full retirement benefit of about 16%. You can call it what you want, but it's a retirement benefit. That's about $8,400 per year. After 4 years, the pension contribution, or after 5 years, I'm sorry, the pension contribution is $42,000, of which $21,000, about half of that, the employees should have probably paid on their own. I have friends that run private business. I used to have a private business, and most of those give a 4% match. A 4% in relation to what's happening here in West Fargo would be about $2,270 a year, or $13,620 over a 5-year period. But the employee would have to also pay in that 13,620 in order to get it on his own. So that's a huge difference. They also receive health care benefits. And so with that in mind, I've heard from several people that employees are going to leave because they're not benefited properly. I do not believe that is true. Other parts of the budget that I have a problem with right now is we're looking to add 5 new street to the street department and 2 new sanitation workers. When we went to a 4-day pickup week, supposedly that 4-day schedule was going to make things more efficient. And being more efficient, I'm not quite sure what's happening with these people on the 5th day. What are they doing? Okay? Why are these new hires even going to be coming on, and are they necessary? I believe as a city commission, you people have the responsibility to the citizens and taxpayers of West Fargo to cut spending and reduce taxes, not just to reduce the mill levy. Because when property values increase, our property taxes increase. I believe we need to get rid of the step system and go to a COLA increase. And if a documented performance review justifies an increase, a wage increase can then be given. I have spoken to current and former West Fargo employees that have basically told me we need to track these unauthorized hires and unauthorized increases who have gotten pay raises during the middle of the year. Some people get more money, some departments get more money, they also get more people. The budget always shows current for each department. They don't show adding. Employees get increases even if they are performing poorly. I don't think that's right. This is the only place it happens. You get a step increase, you get the COLA. Other jobs, you get a performance review. We haven't had that in West Fargo in several years. That's something that needs to come back in. I think you need to take a look at the budget. I think it's still able to cut some things out of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, only those 2 individuals that signed up. All right, we are now out of the public comment portion of the agenda, and we are now on item number 2. Item number 2 is a public hearing of A24-26, a zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV regarding landscaping, screening, and outdoor storage. We call on Mr. Aaron Nelson, our planning director for the city of West Fargo. Good evening, Mr. Nelson, and welcome.
Good evening, President Artis and Commissioners. So item 2 is a request for zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV zoning regulations relating to landscaping, screening, and outdoor storage. This is the next in a series of zoning ordinance updates that staff has been working on over this past year as part of a targeted ordinance update project identified in the 2023 Planning Needs Assessment Action Plan. And similar to recent zoning ordinance amendments, the proposed amendments are intended to clarify some of the more ambiguous aspects of the existing regulations. The landscaping and screening standards in particular are in some places overly wordy and disjointed in nature, with some areas of overlapping and conflicting standards is kind of the main issue that we're looking to address here. So the specific amendments are included in in an attachment in your meeting packet here tonight. But just to highlight a few things in there, I would like to point out that we were able to reduce the landscaping section, specifically the page count, by about half, as it's been reorganized around 5 kind of more clear categories of landscaping that's required, and so it reads a little easier in staff's opinion. It also includes some more detail in terms of which standards apply to which types of development, which our current ordinance does not have. And then additionally, based on input from Southeast Cass Water Resource District, and then in the interest of protecting the riverbank along the Cheyenne River corridor, language is proposed to prohibit removal of tree roots and stumps within 50 feet of the riverbank, which is a new addition to the ordinance. For the most part, I failed to mention, for the most part, the ordinances are not changing substantially. It's primarily a reorganization of the current standards here. So in addition to clarifying the landscaping standards, efforts were made to consolidate multiple different sections of code that relate to screening and outdoor storage. The main issue here was that we have several different sections of code that all regulate the same thing in terms of screening of refuse containers and outdoor storage areas. And so an effort's been made to consolidate all those requirements into one spot in the ordinance and to have those previous sections all just point to one spot in the code. So that's a high level of summary of what's going on with these proposed ordinances here. Again, the details are included in your packet. I'd be happy to dive into details in any one of those sections or provide additional detail as needed. The request tonight, though, is to hold a public hearing and then to approve the first reading of the proposed zoning ordinance amendment. These amendments were discussed with the Planning and Zoning Commission over the past several months and come to you tonight with a recommendation of approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Olson?
On the topic of fencing, prior to you being here, Mr. Nelson, I had, on my normal walkabouts, I had noticed that there was one person who made a fence out of pallets. And they told us that that isn't, you know, proper construction, but we don't have anything saying that we can't stop it. So do we have anything in this language here that we could, you know, because making a fence out of pallets, if I had a neighbor that did that, I really wouldn't like that myself, but I can't do much about it because there's nothing in our ordinances that prohibits it, and then at the same time, there's nothing saying that we can force them to change that either. So is there anything in there for that?
Sure. There's not anything specific in terms of that particular section of code. There is kind of a light touch to the fencing ordinance insofar as we removed some of the screening standards of the fencing section and kind of placed them in a standalone screening section. Other than that, we really didn't touch the fencing requirements, and so we did not touch any of the materials or anything like that that may or may not be in the existing ordinance.
Will you be touching that in another time, or is this the only time we get to talk about that?
We can certainly, take a look at it at any time. As of right now, though, I'd say just referencing back to that planning needs assessment action plan. The targeted amendments that were identified were primarily just looking to clean up some ambiguity in the current ordinances. It wasn't supposed to be anything, comprehensive in nature.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
understand that.
yeah.
It'd be similar in nature of someone making a fence out of old used tires.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't allow that, but if it was already there, we'd probably have to grandfather that in. So we've got a fence out there made out of pallets, and we have to grandfather that in. So I'm just wondering, is this the time or the section to address that, or should we do that at its own separate time to come up with a better plan for that, things like that?
I would say we can do a follow-up amendment. That's,
Okay.
That's something that we could always do. I think we kind of maintain a list of miscellaneous issues that we track. And so I think at the end of this process, the thought is we could kind of go through and just say, is there anything we missed here? Are there things that we didn't think of now that, these have been on the books for a few months? And then come back with kind of a miscellaneous updates, and so that we could add that to our list if that would be amenable to the commission. Otherwise, if that's something you'd like us to take a specific look at right away, we would certainly take that direction as well.
Any additional comments or questions of Mr. Nelson? Mr. Zendel?
I was looking at what you added about the tree stumps, where basically not removing them unless otherwise approved by the forester, the engineer, or Southeast Cass Water Resource District. Do we have some type of mechanism in place for people to do that? Or what would the process be if someone wanted to do that?
In terms of coordinating with Southeast Cass Water Resource District?
Or the city forester, or the city engineer? Like, what would someone do if they wanted to remove a stump? I guess if we're gonna pass this, is there a process in place for that?
Sure. I'd say there's not a defined process in the ordinances. I would say in practice, though, it would be a conversation between, potentially all three of those entities. The main concern would be riverbank stabilization. And so if there's a concern that the city engineer has, for example, that removing the stumps would result in additional destabilization of the riverbank, that would be a
So
consideration.
my comment then would be, do we think we want or to be and? So instead of the city forester, the city engineer, or Southeast Cass Water Resource District, is that something where we want all three entities? Or what happens if entity A says, no, you can't remove that, and then we just go to entity B and they're like, yeah, go ahead? That was the only comment that I had when I read through those.
I guess I would defer to the city engineer perhaps on that one. I think all three of those entities have a pretty good working relationship, though, so I'll let Dan provide any
Just to
additional
clarify
comment.
though, that's only within certain feet of
50
the
feet.
river.
Yep.
Yeah, just so everybody understands that isn't citywide, that's just within so many feet of the river, of the
Yeah.
stump removal.
That's correct. The existing foliage that surrounds the river helps keep the banks stabilized, and we don't want people just to go out there and just grade their yard, take out roots and stumps and things like that. The city does not own the river, nor do we maintain the riverbanks. You know, we get a lot of calls from people that have sloughing that have occurred, and when is the city gonna do something? And it's really outside of the purview of the city to go in and stabilize riverbanks like that. But with this ordinance and having this in ordinance, it helps us at least potentially prevent destabilization of the riverbank. So as far as who they should be talking to, we wouldn't want, say, Southeast Cast to come in and say, yep, go ahead and take down all the trees without talking to us. I think all parties should be involved in the discussion, in my opinion. And it might be that one or two of the parties say, I'm gonna defer the results of the decision for this to this maybe Southeast Cast, or maybe to me, or the engineer in place, or whatnot. So I think everybody should be made aware of it, but as he stated, we've got a very good relationship with all of them. If somebody was to come to Mr. Zander, our forester, he would be reaching out to me, who would be, there will still be this coordination, whether it says and or, and whoever is making that final decision, I'm sure, I have confidence that they would have had those discussions. So I think either language would work, because in the end, not one person eventually probably would make that decision without coordinating with the others.
Yeah, my only concern was just with like Emerald Ash Borer. I know they're probably, I mean, everyone's probably potentially going to be taking down trees that are established at a much faster percentage maybe than normal, but just I feel like we've gotten in trouble with and or before, so I just
Yeah.
like that having some type of process, making sure that they're okay. I don't know if you've talked with Southeast Cass Water Resource District about this specific change, but just to make sure everyone's on the same page is my only comment.
Yeah, there's been discussions, and in any event, if there's anything where people are taking out root systems and stumps, there would be discussions between all three of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any additional questions? Mr. Nelson? We now close and go into a public hearing. We are in a public hearing regarding A24-26 zoning ordinance amendments to Title IV regarding the landscaping, screening, and outdoor storage. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? Again, we are on A24-26, item number 2, the zoning ordinance amendment. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this item? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. We're now back into the regular agenda. Commissioners, this is an actionable item.
Move to approve first reading.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. We have a motion to approve the first reading. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. It's been moved and seconded to approve the first reading of A24-26, a zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV regarding landscaping, screening, and outdoor storage. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 3 is a growth area master plan project initiation. Again, we're going to call on Mr. Aaron Nelson, our planning director.
Thank you. So item 3 is a request to initiate a growth area master plan for the city of West Fargo and to issue a request for proposals to engage a qualified firm to lead this project. This request is in follow-up to information presented at the September 3rd City Commission meeting, where a draft project summary was presented for discussion and feedback. So just to summarize some of what was discussed in the September 3rd meeting, the project will produce a growth area master plan to strategically guide the city's future development in an orderly and coordinated manner that is both fiscally sustainable and consistent with the city's vision for the future of West Fargo. This project would take place over the course of about a year, from early 2025 to early 2026, with the goal of establishing the growth strategy and policy prior to completion of the FM diversion project and the remapping of much of the city's growth area out of the existing floodplain. Once underway, the project will include public and stakeholder input and participation opportunities throughout the life cycle of the project. Project funding of $300,000 has been budgeted for year 2025 within the city's 2024 CIP. And then in addition, the West Fargo Park District has indicated their intention to contribute $30,000 to the project as well. But ultimately, a final project budget would be negotiated with the selected firm prior to future consideration of the project contract by the City Commission. Staff would hope to have a project contract back in front of the City Commission in January of 2025. So included in your meeting packet tonight is that 4-page project summary document that was discussed at the September 3rd meeting, along with the draft of the proposed request for proposals, or RFP. And then at the September 10th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended the City Commission direct staff to draft and publish a request for proposals for the development of a growth area master plan and to otherwise initiate this project, which is the requested action here tonight. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for me, and then again to dive into any details as necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Commissioners, questions, comments? What's your pleasure?
I make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Zundell moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson, second. Moved and second to approve going forward on the growth area master plan project initiation to send out an RFP with regard to expenses and costs of what they might be, and that will be brought back before the City Commission. So, is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is the school zone signage information update. We're going to call on Mr. Dan Hanson, city engineer. This is a request brought forth by Commissioner Zundell at our last meeting. Good evening, Mr. Hanson, and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. As you stated, Commissioner Zundell had asked us to take a look at the school signage, especially in the wake of the accident that occurred. And so what we did is we took a look, and Commissioner Jorgensen had also requested the high school be looked at, and then also to that, we looked at 3 schools in total. They're listed in the staff report here. Liberty Middle School, Cheyenne High School area, the West Fargo High School area, and the Cheney Middle School area. And looks like I've got some stuff that was popping up on my screen here. There's some exhibits in here, and for the most part, we took a look at these different areas, and we found that there was school zones in place in these areas. We did find some inconsistencies between the signage of each one, so we're looking to get that signage to be more standard from school to school. The other thing was on our major corridors, which is what Commissioner Zundell had asked us to look at, was on veterans, if there was a place that we could put school signage, school zone on that corridor. And so we did take a look at it. We did reference the MUTCD, which is the traffic control device Bible that we go by. They did not take any differentiation between any kind of an elementary school versus a high school versus any school. So we are allowed to put those school zones in place. One thing that I would say is we took a look, especially with that roadway being a major corridor, veterans, and I have it up on the screen here, is that it's, we don't want to, there's different ways that you can sign it, and we are proposing to use the signage that states when children are present for traffic to slow down, because we don't want, just because school is in session, for everybody to have to slow down on that corridor all the time during school session. So when children are present, obviously, even if there's no signage, people should be slowing down and moderating their speed, but this just gives another alert because of the signage for them to look for pedestrians crossing the street. So we do believe that this will make it safer. And One thing to note on, excuse me, on the Liberty Middle School and Cheyenne High School area on veterans, there are signs that are proposed that would be going on the east side, which is in the city of Fargo. So we will need some coordination and some buy-in from the city of Fargo's engineering department for us to be able to put those in. Another thing is that I have had emailed conversations between Commissioner Anderson because the school district does go in these different areas. Not only would we request for them to allow us to place these signs, but if there would be any kind of a cost share, that they would be able to cost share in the installation of these signs. It would be intended that our Public Works Department would put these signs in, so we would be doing the work. They would order up the signs and install them ourselves. There is room in Public Works signage budget to do this if Fargo comes back without an offer of cost sharing, but we will definitely ask the question to see if they would be interested in cost sharing and allow us to install these signs. Again, for the most part, to summarize the three different exhibits that you see in front of us, the one that is a bit different is the one that we just spoke of, because this would be installing all new signs along Veterans Boulevard, and you can see in the packet where they are. They basically start the school zone with a speed limit sign to reduce speeds when children are present. There's additional signage that you would see that is basically an alert of pedestrians potentially crossing at upcoming intersections. And then also at the end of the school zone, there would be an end school zone sign, so that way the traffic would know that they're exiting the area where they would be required to slow down. I'll just kind of jump down to the West Fargo High School. For the most part, West Fargo High School is signed very appropriately along 9th and up on 7th. The one thing that we did notice is that there was no end school zone sign for northbound traffic, so to be similar to the other situations, we'd be looking to install that sign as well. It's the signs that are outlined in green that we're proposing to install on these exhibits. And then again, lastly, over at near Cheney Middle School, there is additional signage that would occur. Right now on Beaton Drive East, there is not as much signage. All there is just the cautionary pedestrians ahead sign that is in place. So we would be looking to install the school speed limit signs and then also end school zone there, as well as on 19th Avenue East and across the road on 17th Avenue East, installing these end school zone signs. So I believe with these improvements, I do believe that we'll have better safety in the area of our schools. We are allowed to do it according to the rules and guidelines that we follow for traffic signage. And we would look to recommend to allow Public Works to do this work with us obviously coordinating with the city of Fargo where necessary. And as I stated in the report, unless there's issues or commissioners that would be against us doing this signage, we would plan to proceed as soon as we can to do this, to get the signs up as soon as we can get them ordered and placed. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Questions, Mr. Hanson? Commissioner Zundel?
Are your speed ones the ones that blink at you? I presume the ones that record like how fast you're going.
They just show you how fast you're going. It doesn't record anything.
No.
Okay.
No watching, no tickets, no nothing.
Right.
They would blink at you how fast you're going. Is there a reason we don't have any of those on veterans? It looks like we have some by Cheney on 9th. I see.
So those, that type of signage doesn't know when children are present. And so if they would be doing that at 9 o'clock at night as well. As far as I know, you can't program those to be time specific. They're basically, they've got a program to tell you what your speed is, and they've got a solar panel on them to make sure they're powered.
But the speed limit for Cheney is the same, correct? So it drops only to 20 when children are present? So it would be 30 normally, 20 when children are present, and then back up to 30?
Yeah, the existing speed limit is is 30 in the area. So the ones that are not highlighted in green actually are in place now. And so the ones that we would, even though there's a speed limit of 30 sign there, and it shows their speed, it's also following that closer to the intersection that we would put, for example, I'm sorry, this sign already exists. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, or.
So I guess I'm wondering about the addition of a your speed sign specifically also on veterans by the intersection that seems to be causing the most problems. Because I understand obviously that it's going to blink and just tell you your speed, but looks like we also have them on Cheney where we already have a speed limit that dips. There's an existing your speed sign.
One on 52nd by Liberty, Joe.
And there's one on 52nd by Liberty. So the only sign that I guess I'm missing in that area of veterans by Liberty would be, we have your speed signs on 36th Avenue going east and west. I'm wondering about the addition of a your speed sign on veterans in the school zone, similar to what we have in Cheney.
I would recommend against that just because of the nature of that roadway and how much it is a major arterial street with multiple, with the amount of traffic that we have on there. You do come up to controlled intersections with signalized intersections that you're coming up to and things like that. To put a your speed indicator that's monitoring speed, like a radar speed sign, out on veterans, I wouldn't recommend that because of the off times. If it could know when children are present to actually flash and let people know their speed, I would 100% support that. But just any other time when you have traffic flowing, because mass traffic slowing down does, it tricks the timing of the signals a little bit for your traffic flows, especially during rush hour traffic and things like that. So to have everybody always slowing down, if they're adhering to that, because it's going to tell them their speed even in times when they're not supposed to slow down because there are no children present. And I just worry that you're going to just impede some of the existing traffic signal timing if we were to actually make that a permanent placement, if that makes sense.
Can you clarify the difference of where Cheney is on veterans and why that's not an issue there, but it would be an issue by Liberty?
That is a fantastic question. That's once you get to.
Sorry, I'm not trying to
No, that's fine.
split hairs. I'm just trying to understand why we have the differences.
There's a bit of a difference in north of I-94 versus south of I-94, the traffic speeds and again, the signal timing, the amount of traffic. It's like north of 94 seems to be a little bit more controlled. It's more, especially in rush hour, especially after the schools let out. It does contradict what I just said as far as it being on the same roadway. If you follow north-south, that Veterans turns into 9th. I get that. And there is a tremendous amount of traffic up on 9th. It's just, I guess I don't have a fantastic answer for you on that. I'm not sure if the one that's existing on 9th on the north side, if I had to pick between one or the two, I would rather remove that one than add the one to South Veterans. But I know that's not the intent here for what we're doing. I can definitely look into that and see if we should get some traffic analysis done if it is going to impede any kind of traffic signal timing. I can definitely look further into that. And then if we make the decision that we want it, I can look in it, and if it is not going to screw things up too bad with the timing and the traffic flow, or if there isn't something that I'm not thinking about as far as that arterial roadway having one, we can definitely get that installed. But to me, it just, without having the research in front of me
Sure.
to answer that question out front,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem right, but I can definitely look into it.
think my big concern with that intersection specifically, and I drive that road every single day on my way to and from work, is that we have a high school and a middle school, and, well, obviously we have so much care around elementary schools. What elementary schools don't have is teenagers texting and driving, and they don't have distracted driving, and they don't have brand new drivers, and they don't have kind of all of these extra dangers where I almost, every day that I sit at that intersection, I see teenagers walking across the street, looking at their phone, not paying attention to what's going on, which I think is maybe a little bit different than elementary schools. So I guess my main concern is the difference between the two, and I know a lot of the emails that we got, that was kind of a main question, was like, well, why is it this way for intersection A and school A on the same road versus not? And then my other question that I had was, I know when we have the new traffic study coming up, we talked about kind of a controlled right turn. Is there any way to do anything about the right turn onto Veterans from 36 in the interim? Like no right turn on red between the hours of da-da-da-da-da? Because I think that was in the updated plan that we were going to do, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
The light was going to change.
what will be there is there will be like call it a signal board on the signal that doesn't light up anything, but when it does during certain times, it would actually light up and say no turn on red
Right.
During those times.
Similar to 94 and Cheyenne.
Yeah, you see a lot of that. It's a pretty common thing. I know you see them in Moorhead at the diverging diamond and different areas in town. That it's as far as, I mean, we could take a look at putting a sign up on the signal, just no turn on red.
Between either, whether it's certain hours, between the school hours, in or out, if that's something that we're adding. I just didn't know if there was anything we could do.
It's tough without the signalized part of it because you can't put too much information on a traffic sign. For us to put a hard-mounted plate sign on a signal, it's tough to put that up with conditions because people just aren't going to read it. I think it would either be a no turn on red or
Sure.
or nothing, or leave it as it is. It is currently signaled, so I mean, and pedestrians can push the button and get a protection for there. And I understand your comment. I have a 15-year-old learning to drive, and I almost want to put a helmet on before we go out teaching him every time. And it's definitely a learning curve when you get near the high schools for the drivers around there versus other, moms and dads dropping their kids off versus high schoolers with their brand new license trying to coming to and from a high school is a completely different driver. But I could also look into that, but I would say you either have to go either no turn on red,
Sure.
which I think would also lead to a public outcry because then you'd get a bunch of queuing of people that can't turn on red, or you'd get people that are just gonna turn on red anyways if nobody's coming. Whereas if it's actually lit up, it's lit up because there is a pedestrian in the walk. You know what I mean? So I would almost recommend a do nothing approach to that for now, knowing that there's changes coming next year.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Additional questions? Due to the fact that the city would be spending money, I would like to see a motion that we move forward with the recommendation by engineering. If there's some additional comments and questions, that can come back, but being we're spending money, I'd like the commission to have a motion on this. Fact,
Can I add a condition to that? Would we like to add the flashing your speed sign if I find that it's acceptable to put it in with that motion?
I'll have to defer to the commission or whoever makes the motion on that, Mr. Hanson, but thank you for that.
Yep.
Do we have a motion?
I will make the motion to approve, and if it is okayed by engineering to also include the additional sign, I would motion to include that.
Have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson, second. Been moved and seconded to approve the school zone signage as outlined by Mr. Hanson with the possible addition of a flashing speed sign upon review of engineering. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is project number 1348, sanitary sewer rehabilitation. It's the core areas, alleys, and rear yards. Again, we call on Mr. Dan Hanson, our city engineer, and the purpose of this discussion is to approve a change order number 2. Mr. Hanson, please.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. This project, sanitary sewer rehabilitation, core area alleys and rear yards, is a project that's been underway. It's been going on for a decent amount of time now this summer. It's going well for the most part. There was some things that have come up over time where there was areas that were not televised during the design. I have fielded some, since the packet came out, I have fielded some questions from commissioners as far as why wasn't it televised? Did somebody drop the ball? Is this something that we could have caught? And I would say that the vast majority, if not all, of these circumstances are areas that we were not able to get televised because either there was blockage where the camera couldn't get through, protruding taps. It's possible that there was, sags in the pipe where the camera was submerged. And we knew going into this project that there were some unknowns. This is a very old system that we're finding there's a lot of spot repairs. I say there's a lot of spot repairs, but I mean, there's about 400 homes that we're traveling past and about 400 services out to those homes. So it is a pretty extensive project, and there has been, I don't have the number in front of me of total, but say around 25 areas where we've needed to dig it up, and some of those they were identified in the plans. There was some spot repairs that were identified in the plans. In the areas where we could not get the pipe televised, we did include some contingencies in the project, knowing that there were some unknowns. So there was contingencies in the engineer statement of cost when we awarded the project that were presented in April of $367,355.85, which represents a 10% contingency on the project for unknowns. And we've been finding some of these unknowns. For the most part, I would say the majority of the spot repairs that are in this change order have actually already been done. Because I've been fielding calls from the consultant and the contractor during construction, where they're at that location, they've discovered the deficiency in the pipe that needs to be fixed. They're not able to reline it, and the question is do you want us to leave it or should we fix it? And I've been making the calls that we should fix them and not leave these areas because these are the worst spots in the pipe. We don't want to leave them uncorrected. So I have been making the call sporadically when I've gotten those that, yes, fix the pipe. That's the whole purpose of this project, is to fix the pipe and make sure that the sewage keeps moving. And also, if we weren't able to fix the pipe, that would mean there would be an entire stretch of pipe that wouldn't have been able to be relined, which goes past multiple houses. So it was imperative that we do the work at the time. There are some of these spot repairs that are on the change order that have been identified that have not been done yet. But overall, with this change order in the amount of $291,603.86, combine that with the previous change order, the total additions to the cost of the project, including this change order, would be $335,103.86, which is shy of the amount of contingencies that we had in the project. So we are still on track to be under what the number was in the CIP of the $4,050,000 that was projected. We're projecting a final cost estimated to be $4,017,000 approximately with this change order in place. So these are necessary corrections that we did. I would love to be able to bring each one in, because we're spending taxpayer dollars on these. I'd love to bring each one up in front of you to do that, but it's just not feasible when the contractor is on site needing to do the work at the time for me to say, hold on, I need to wait for the next commission meeting. So I did make the call when it was necessary to make those corrections, but also I would look for approval of this change order to pay the contractor for the ones that have been done, and also for the ones that we know are needing to be corrected. And with that, I would answer any questions.
Questions? Commissioner Olson?
Dan, can you just scroll up so the public can see the, some of those pictures that you've got?
Yep, absolutely. I'll just kind of go through them. You can see in this picture, the pipe is very plugged when they got to it. You can see where a camera wouldn't be able to make it through that. And believe it or not, sewage is able to slowly make it through there. They definitely clean that out, but this is an example of a blockage. This is an example of where the incoming pipe is coming in below the invert of the following pipe. And when you have, we can line over through sags, we can line through cracked pipe, even when there was areas where the pipe didn't exist in spots because it had collapsed, partially collapsed. You can line through that, but you do need basically a circular tube to do that. Slight faulting in between the pipes can be lined through, but once you get to something like this where it's a fourth of the pipe diameter, you don't reline through that because you're basically going to be making that problem exist in perpetuity. This is another example of, coming in, you can see here, this is actually near a manhole. Excuse me, this wouldn't be an example of one that we weren't able to televise, obviously, because this is just right outside of a manhole, but this is an example of something where you wouldn't be able to reline something like this. So this is an example of a spot repair that would need to be done. And this one here, they weren't able to go through. You could see the amount of sewage in the pipe at this location, and also to be able to jump from one side up into the other. Again, you can't reline through that. So I would expect that this was likely one of the spots that wasn't able to be televised because it was probably submerged. These pictures, this picture here would have been after they went in and jetted everything and been able to potentially remove something that wasn't able to be removed by our forces when we televised prior to the project. But you can see this is another example of a fault where it's a faulted pipe. It jumps up in elevation, and by just relining through this, you would leave the pipe half submerged upstream from that. Sewage can get through sags, especially when there's a large amount of sewage coming through. But again, when we're out there to fix things, make sure things are moving smoothly, trying to correct future clogging of the mainline arteries of the sanitary sewer system, it's something that you need to correct. And you wouldn't have been able to reline this piece of pipe for
Commissioner Anderson?
So I've been seeing these guys in my neighborhood a lot in the last several months. What is the status of this project? Are we getting close to being done with this whole thing, or do you have an estimate?
As far as a percentage of how much has been done, I don't know if Matt is here to be able. This is Matt Prochniak with Moore Engineering, who's the project manager for it. He can probably speak exactly. I could give generalities, but he could probably speak more exact.
Good evening. The jetting and cleaning of the lines, it's like 24,000 lineal feet of main line. That's about 95% complete. And then the relining of the main line pipe itself is about 60% done. The services, only a couple have been started. They can only do 4 of those a day after the main line has been relined. So that will be completed in 2025. So moving along well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Additional questions for Mr. Hanson?
Yep, thank you.
I want to note one thing, that, as a department head, he has discretionary on some of these expenses, additional expenses, and I'm grateful that you brought this back to the City Commission as we're closing in on what our contingency was of $367,000, and we're up to $335,000, and Mr. Prosniak and yourself has indicated that there's things that were unknown that we couldn't be viewed by a camera. So I think it's a real positive thing that you brought it back here, Mr. Hanson. I appreciate that very much. We are getting close to what our contingency is, and I'm sure if there's anything additional, what we'll probably have additional conversation with regard to what may or may not have to be amended here, so. thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. And with 95% of the jetting completed, there shouldn't be much more surprises for us, because that's the main thing that finds the problems.
Very good. Commissioners?
Move to approve?
Commissioner Anderson moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the change order number 2 for project number 1348, sanitary sewer rehabilitation in the core area, alleys, and rear yards. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hamlin.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is the 2025 final budget review. We're going to call on Mr. Dustin Scott, our city administrator. Good evening and welcome.
Well, good evening, President Dardis and Commissioners. Well, I am proud to stand before you this evening and deliver the final budget for 2025. The budget has been published to our website, and pending any final changes from tonight's discussion, we will make the final arrangements and deliver it to the county before the deadline of October 10th. I'm going to provide a brief overview. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation tonight, but I'll provide a brief overview, and I'll turn it over to the Commission for a discussion and questions. First, the City Commission directives from your special meeting on the 23rd of September have been incorporated, including the merge of the fire fund into the general fund, a 2.5% cost of living adjustment for all staff and commissioners, an increase of 0.8 mils for the library, and a decrease of 1.32 mils for the general fund. Overall, the city's tax levy is going to decrease by 0.52 mils. The net position for all major funds are shown on the last page of the budget book. And as noted in the second to the last page, in the reserves section, we are using $1,707 to balance the budget using our reserves. So again, $1,707 coming from reserves to balance out the budget. So again, that was just a really high-level brief overview. Before I turn it back over to you for discussion and questions, I'd like to share some gratitude here. First and foremost, I want to thank our staff for their hard work and commitment to providing exceptional services for our community. And I really couldn't be prouder to work alongside finer human beings. I want to thank you, commissioners, for your active participation throughout this budget cycle, for supporting our staff, and for leading our community each and every day. I know as a commissioner, there is no such thing as a day off. Your emails are always active, your phones are active, and we certainly appreciate all your service. A special thank you to Sheila and Rachel for all of the work over the last few months pulling all of this budget material together. And I'm excited to have now our new finance director, Willie, help us as we move our budget forward into future years. And finally, I'd like to thank all of our residents who do take time out of their lives to be engaged with the city, to ask questions. Sometimes they're difficult questions, but we appreciate them and we appreciate their feedback. So with that, I'll stand for any questions and/or comments.
Commissioners, questions for Mr. Scott? Commissioner Olson?
Not really a question, more of a comment. It's been stated several times that people don't believe that there will be staff members that will move on because of the 2.5% COLA. Well, we've already suffered one that is moving on because of that. That's the primary reason they're moving on. So it does happen, and it will happen more. This person is leaving for an identical job in the private sector that has a better package than what we can offer. So those things do exist out there. So we can't be blind to that either. We have to compensate our employees so we can retain them to provide the services. Now we're gonna have to go and search and find somebody to fill that spot, and they're not gonna bring the experience that this person had. So we all have to be mindful of that. We have to retain our valued employees. And they seem to be kind of the easy targets to pick at, to choose to not compensate properly when it comes to these things. And it just, it bothers me that the public out there think that they're paid, that they're overcompensated for what they do. And I strongly disagree with that.
Commissioner Olson, anything additional for Mr. Scott? You've been generous.
I have
in
a
your-
couple things.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
One, I just like to make sure that all the new employees, I know we delayed in hiring them, that they are set to those dates for the delay, because that's what was in the budget. Two, I think we really need to address our step system. As people are maxed out, those employees are still attending schools, classes, conventions, other networking things, and continuing to improve the departments and the people they're surrounded with, especially the newer ones. They keep striving to improve the sector they're in, whether it's police, fire, whatever it is. And they do it while they know that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So I really think we need to address how, like, the proficiency or whatever pay rate goes, and not maxing out our employees. Just they're bringing something back to keep this community great.
Thank you, Commissioner. As I begin to say, Mr. Scott, you've been very generous in giving a lot of credit to the commission and to the department heads and the like, and I would like to thank you for your efforts, for your Saturdays and your Sundays, that during this budget process that I know that you invested in too as well. So thank you for your efforts. Commissioners, is there any more discussion on the budget? This is an actionable item, Commissioners.
Move we approve.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve the budget as presented. Is there a second?
I will second.
I'll second.
I have Commissioner Jorgensen seconding. Is there any additional discussion?
I just would like Mr. Shockley to confirm, as we all got an email here again this week, that Commissioner and I are allowed to vote on this as commissioners.
Commissioner Jorgensen has raised the question to legal counsel with regard to spousal employees. Is it legal for them to vote on this? And Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. The short answer is yes, it is proper for you to, as a commissioner, to vote. The North Dakota Century Code provides that it would be a conflict if you were an employee of the city. You can't be an employee and on the board, but it doesn't extend to spousal members. As we previously discussed, of course, as commission members, you can't participate in HR matters regarding your spouse. But you can certainly vote on the city budget because it has equal application across the entire city, and it doesn't specifically identify, COLAs and step increases apply across all groups of employees.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. We have a motion and a
Thank you.
second.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley, for clarifying that. And again, I know it's redundant. We've discussed it several times, but it's on the record again, and I appreciate your commentary.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2025 budget. Is there any further discussion?
Like a roll call vote?
Very good. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Zundell?
Aye.
Commissioner Jardis?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Nay.
Motion passes on a 4-1 vote. Item number 7, a resolution setting rates and charges for water, sewer, sanitation rates effective January 1st, 2025. Mr. Shockley, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. You'll recall last month, the City Public Works Director had provided a schedule of water rates, sewer rates, and sanitation rates, along with some of the other rates to the City Commission for review. That night, the Commission gave approval to that. Pursuant to the city ordinances, it's required that you do a formal resolution. So there's been no change to the rates that were presented to you before. This is just a housekeeping item to formalize it in the resolution. I would defer to the city staff on the specifics regarding each individual rates because they presented them last month. But the resolution is a housekeeping item.
Mr. Scott, do you have any comments with regard to deference to city staff?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Right.
Actionable.
Yes, it is an action item.
I move to approve.
Commissioner Zendel moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Commissioner Olson. We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution setting rates and charges for water, sewer, and sanitation rates effective January 1st, 2025. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 8 is a resolution authorizing the issuance of improvement warrants. Mr. John Shockley, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight you have before you a resolution authorizing the sale of refunding improvement bonds. Today we had the city, through Colliers, conducted a sale of refunding improvement bonds. Colliers representative John Lundby is here to present those sales results. But as you'll see in your resolution, the sale results were favorable. The interest rate was 3.9%, and John can go into that a little more in-depthly. So resolution is the same as what was presented in your packet. We just updated it today with the results of the sale.
Good evening, Mr. Lindsay. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President Dardis, Commissioners. My name is John Lundby with Colliers here in Bismarck. Happy to be here again tonight to present the results of the public sale we conducted this morning for the city's refunding improvement bonds, Series 2024 issue. Pleased to report the sale went very well. With market turmoils and ups and downs that we've seen in the past couple of weeks, the winning bid resulted in a true interest cost of 3.917% to the city on a 26-year maturity. Bonds are callable in 10 years or 2034, and the final par amount of the issue was $15.98 million. We saw a total of 5 bids from across the country from firms located in Milwaukee, New York City, Chicago, Dallas, and Florida. It was a strong response from the market with tight competition across all bids and is a direct correlation to the strength of the city. I've handed out the credit report before you that was prepared by Moody's, the public rating agency. They reaffirmed the city's AA3 rating for the issue, and it's something for which the Commission and city staff should be very proud. Onstead Twitchell, as Mr. Shockley said, prepared the resolution for you. With your approval, we'll move forward to finalize all documentation for closing on Monday, October 21st. And just personally, I'd like to thank the Commission, the city, for all the work and the opportunity again to serve the city of West Fargo, and for that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Any questions, gentlemen? Good, thank you. Again, this is an actionable item for a resolution authorizing the issuance of improvement warrants as outlined by Mr. Shockley and Mr. Lindsay. An actionable item.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Commissioner Zundell seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of improvement warrants. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 9 is the city administrator's report. Call on Mr. Scott.
Thank you again, Commissioner President and Commissioners. Just one update for you this evening. Our Director of Economic Development, Casey Sanders Berglund, asked me to provide a brief update on our Child Care Facility Improvement Grant. As the year end approaches, Casey is going to be reaching out to the recipients of the grant to make sure that they have all of their spending in order, that they have enough time to utilize all the dollars that they were awarded. Also gain feedback and any of the impact information that will be useful to guide us into the future with a program like this. So again, she just wants to make sure that there's ample time that they get to, again, utilize full dollar amount of their grants. You know, we really only have a couple months left of the year, so time is of the essence. She also wanted to remind me that if there are questions or inquiries that either you have or that you receive, please don't hesitate to get a hold of Casey and work through those. Any questions on that I can try to answer?
Commissioners?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any non-agenda items we'd like to bring forward at this time? Commissioner Zundell.
So one issue I wanted to get everyone's opinion on to see if it was worth spending a little time looking into different options or not has to do with parking. So I have been contacted by a number of residents specifically with regard to the fact that we do no parking basically one full day at a time, as opposed to overlaying parking, either being, you know, if you're going to have streets, no parking on Monday from 8 to 5, perhaps the avenue stays open, and vice versa. We do it completely fully by districts now, basically by how you have your garbage day. The struggle comes in when people, especially in the older neighborhoods, have like a narrow driveway, single stall garage, things like that, and they have children, teenagers who have cars. They don't have anywhere to park their vehicles, so it's not like they can be compliant and move their car out of the way from the street to the avenue on the day that they're going to be conducting the street cleaning or anything else like that. So I wanted to bring it up. I was curious if Mr. Nielsen, anybody, if you receive complaints, I feel like it's kind of the more common complaint that I hear about now from residents, or if anybody else had any thoughts and it was worth looking into different options.
Engineering or Chief Nielsen, you have any comments that you've heard public sentiment on these issues? We're welcoming to the podium Chief Pete Nielsen, Chief of Police, City of West Fargo.
Thank you. We do get complaints, and when I say we get the complaints, I would say we get them on both sides. And when I say that, I mean that we get the complaints a lot of the times where Commissioner Zundell was talking about, that a lot of the smaller or the older neighborhoods with smaller driveways, they ask us what to do. And I know when this went in place, we gave them 6 months prior to any sort of warnings. And then from 6 months to the year, we gave warnings. And then after the years, when we started issuing parking citations. But it does come about where we get the complaints on both sides for these. And a lot of the times, the people that do call in and complain, talk to supervisors, they ask us, well, where do you want us to park? And it's a valid question in some of the neighborhoods, like you said, where do they park? And I know we ran some reports, I think Commissioner Anderson and I have spoke about this in the past regarding some of the reports that we've pulled in different neighborhoods. And these are handled mainly by our CSOs, which are the college students that we employ on a part-time basis. But yes, we do get a lot of complaints on this, and it's generated through our supervisors of the CSO program. And it goes both sides. We have people calling in saying, you can't park here, and who are those people that are complaining? Are they the ones that have just one vehicle? I don't know, but we do get complaints on both sides.
We're going to also ask Mr. Dan Hansen, city engineer, for his input.
Thank you, Commissioner Dardis and Commissioners. I don't believe, without having looked at it, but I don't believe there's an ordinance that states you can't park on the side of the street, on these streets, or, as general. There is an ordinance that talks about street width in relation to parking on one side, where they do talk about for development density, it's a 4-0406.3. It does talk about minimum pavement widths, and my phone's not cooperating as well with me as I would like it to, but anyways, that's the ordinance. That's the only ordinance that I know of that it does speak to parking, but it's based off of street widths, which for when you go into the older neighborhoods, you're not changing the widths of the streets. I wish there was something that was more black and white that says if you've got a street that's, these streets you can, these streets you can't, and have something, because I field a lot of calls, especially around the high school. That's the area that I get the most calls about, where kids, I shouldn't say kids, young drivers, people that go to the high school, they're parking all over the place because they need to get to school, and they're parking on those side streets. And there's one side of the street that you can't park on, so the side of the street where people are living, they've got where you can park, it's usually full of students that have parked there. So they're wondering, can we park on both sides of the street? Which it's like, no, there's just not width of the street for that. So I have fielded complaints, but that ordinance that I referenced there is, as far as I know, the only place that it speaks to in reference to.
I would say the other complaint that I get is even in the newer neighborhoods where the density of the houses seems to be so much closer that even when you look driveway to driveway, there is literally, you can't fit a car in between the driveways, and that's typically the side of the street that you're allowed to park on, and then this other side of the street is the one that perhaps has more room to park, and that's kind of the no parking side of the street. And so I would say I hear about that, but the most frequent complaint is our own parking signs. It's our own generated, Monday through Friday, whatever day we have for maintenance day, of no parking, where people are saying, I don't know where to park my, I have XYZ many vehicles, I simply just don't know where I'm supposed to park on my maintenance day if I can't park it anywhere in my neighborhood. So
compounding that issue, I've had that one as well, and compounding it on the side that was parked that you can park on, in between said driveways, between one or two of them is a fire hydrant, so I can't park there. And then they came and they installed the community mailboxes
Yep.
between the other ones. So now I'm down to between 3 driveways on my entire street when the other side is open. Yeah, it's definitely something that we could spend some time thinking about, seeing what we can do to improve. But I don't have a black and white answer for you tonight.
One comment.
Mr. Olson.
Is the city required to provide on-street parking? Just give that some thought. Are we required to provide parking on streets to residents?
No, but as a taxpayer or resident would expect.
Right, they would
They
expect.
would have the opportunity to park in front of their house.
Right.
With all,
But at the same time, how much stuff do they have in their garage? Can they even park in their garage and in their driveways? All that stuff. So those are all things you have to consider too. Some people use their garages as storage units and then park their 3 cars on the streets because they can't park in their garage. So those are all things we have to weigh and balance out. So just keep that in mind.
I would say also if we spend all the time talking about MetroCog's initiatives and trying to work on housing density and where we're going to put everybody and, you know, the missing middle and all that, I think this is a problem. I think it's very apparent. We get complaints on both sides. Engineering's getting complaints. I know I'm certainly getting complaints. I think in my opinion, it is worth some time to spend looking at some options. I didn't want to.
I'm just saying that.
I didn't want to request any staff time go into it unless everybody else had an appetite for it.
Well, the fact that engineering's fielded complaints, and PD, the police department, has had fielded complaints, and you've recently, as a newly elected commissioner, have some complaints, so it's worth having a conversation. And I would ask you to facilitate that sit down.
I would love to.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Zundell.
So do I need to make a motion? Do we need a motion?
That's not necessary.
Thank you.
Are there any other non-agenda items that any of the commissioners would like to bring forward? Are there any non-agenda items any of the department heads would like to bring forward? That being said, Commissioner Anderson,
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Zundell,
Second.
we stand adjourned. Thank you.